So, after the frustrations of the previous day, where we got on the plane to Lukla and just ended up flying around in circles, then going to Ramchak, sitting around there for hours, before going back to have another go to Lukla. Got really early again next morning, got to Kathmandu airport, only to be told that Lukla was shut and it was likely to be shut all day, which meant that if you wanted to start the trek to Everest Base Camp, helicopter looked to be the only option. The issue we had was that the people I was trekking with, they didn't have a day at the end of the trek for contingency, so to do the trek it was either get a helicopter or potentially we wouldn't be getting to Everest Base Camp. So we took the decision to hire a helicopter. Due to the amount of cancellations, the helicopters were in high demand. The starting price was $2,500 for a helicopter, which is divided by the number of people on the helicopter, and it seats 5. But there's only 4 in our group, so it was one of those bills, £450 at the end of the trek, which I wasn't expecting. But I must admit, you pay all that money to get there, and after all the time spent training, getting yourself prepared, not to do the trek was not on the cards. So we ended up hiring a helicopter. The person who was provided by the trekking company did an amazing job trying to get the price down, trying to get everything sorted out, and we ended up hiring this one here, which was it was interesting. There's a real weight limit on helicopters, so instead of just weighing your bags, you stand on the scales with your bags, they weigh you and everything you've got. So you can see we're all waiting to go, and it's quite exciting. I always liked flying by helicopters. I used to do quite a bit in the military, but when we took off, the views over Kathmandu were absolutely incredible. The helicopter flew low over the city, which gave a great view. I managed to sit in the front, which was awesome. As you can see, we're going over the end of the runway now, over the parked up planes, heading out towards Kathmandu, and you can see in the distance the mountains and the start of the hills. The flight was incredible. Wasn't expecting it, but I'm glad we actually managed to get going on the trek. We were going to get to Lukla. Doesn't matter what happens, we're going to get to Lukla. As you can see, the mountains are drawing closer as we're getting nearer to Lukla. The interesting point is you don't actually land at the airstrip at Lukla. You go to the heliport, which is around 200 metres below Lukla. And the trek out, you don't actually go into Lukla, you circumnavigate it, so you go past it and higher up. It added an hour or two to the journey, and it was well worth it, and thoroughly enjoyed it. As you can see now, we're approaching the Lukla heliport. From here I was able to put my camera outside the window and get some amazing views of the way in and the approach into the heliport. As you can see on the ground, there's already 3 other aircraft there unloading. Once we hit the ground, it's a case of get out. They chucked our bags out, and then the helicopter took straight off. Due to Lukla airport closed and fixed wing not flying, I can imagine they were just ferrying people backwards and forwards all day. Normally on the Everest Base Camp trek it's really busy, especially that time of the year, but due to the closure of Lukla, people just couldn't get in the quantity. Helicopters only take 5 people, so in the tea houses all the way up it was very, very quiet compared to on the way back, where the Everest Base Camp trek, the paths were just heaving with people, and on a night the tea houses were very busy. That was in stark contrast from the way up, where there was just us there. And it just shows what a difference it makes with the airport being shut for 5 days. think the record so far is 12 days closed, which must have caused havoc. And I think if people can't get to every base camp, they go to the Annapurna circuit, and there's other walks they can do. But I came to do every base camp. That's what I wanted to do. So feet on the ground was brilliant. Once we got our bags and got everything sorted out, we had a bit of lunch in the tea house. This was my first experience in a tea house. Dal bhat became a staple of the diet. Dal bhat power 24 hour, as the t-shirts say, on the way up, and especially in the shops into Namche Bazaar. Like you can see, there's no helicopter coming in here. So it was the first experience of a tea house, and ginger and honey tea I became quite partial to as well. It was just nice to get finally onto the trek, and once we've actually had lunch, we got ourselves sorted out and actually started trekking up towards our first stop for the night. It took a few extra hours because of the lateness of the day, and it was actually quite dark when we got in, so I was glad I put the head torch into my backpack and not into my main case, because I really needed it. I have to admit, the tea houses were basic but really comfortable. The mattress wasn't overly thick, but it beats carrying a roll mat, and it was much better than a roll mat actually. I got a sleeping bag from the trekking company, and it was a down-filled bag, and it was really warm. So most of the trip I just used it as a quilt, unzipped it, put my inner as a sheet, and just used it as a standard quilt, and I was perfectly warm. It's quite deceiving. As you walk out from the tea house, it's quite flat, but then it gets quite steep quite quickly, and it was a bit of a, oh yes, we're definitely now in Nepal, we are definitely now at a much higher altitude. It's quite surprising when you're at altitude how quickly you get out of breath and how much slower you get. I must admit, for me, the Everest Base Camp trek was a lesson in slow walking. For me, getting out of breath was a bit of a nightmare, because once you got out of breath, it was difficult to get it back. So trying to control your breathing so you don't get out of breath. And if you start feeling you're getting out of breath, you just slow down or stop, catch your breath back and carry on going. So by the end of it, or quite soon, you get into a rhythm of how to walk at a pace where you don't really get out of breath. As you can see, just outside the heliport, we get our first prayer rock, where all the carvings of the prayers are on there. You see these all the way up and all the way down. Our Sherpa guide was telling us all about them and what the prayers say on them. And there's a rule: you always, anything, a prayer rock or a shrine, always walk to the left of it, and that brings good luck. If you go to the right, we never did that, so I didn't get any bad luck, which was good. So we carried on going and up. It wasn't far when we first saw our horses. Horses and yaks are common. The yaks have got some quite scary horns, so keep well out of the way of those. 20 minutes, but there's a pack of horses coming up. The horse was coming down, carrying all sorts, from gas bottles to water to beer, you name it. It's all transported by person, carrying it on their back, or a donkey, horse, or as I say, yak for the more heavy things. So this was our first experience, and it was really nice just to be out there in the fresh air and walking. As you can see, there's lots of low cloud around. That seemed to be the first few days. Low cloud, bit wet, bit drizzly, but also really, really warm. So first few days I just wore shorts and gaiters, because anything else I was just too hot.